When most people hear about ADHD, they often think about someone who can't concentrate, gets distracted easily, or struggles to sit still and complete tasks. But there's another side of ADHD that can seem almost contradictory: hyperfocus. Some people with ADHD can become so deeply absorbed in something that hours seem to disappear. They may become completely immersed in a video game, creative project, hobby, conversation, book, research topic, or something they're particularly interested in. They might look incredibly focused from the outside, which can lead people to ask, if you can concentrate on that for hours, why can't you concentrate on other things? The answer is that ADHD isn't simply about having too little attention. It can involve difficulties with regulating and directing attention. Attention isn't an on or off switch. Your brain constantly decides what information deserves priority and how much mental energy should be devoted to it. For someone with ADHD, regulating that attention can be more difficult. Something that is highly interesting, novel, challenging, rewarding, or emotionally engaging may capture attention extremely strongly. Meanwhile, a task that feels repetitive, predictable, boring, or lacking in immediate reward can be much harder to stay engaged with, even when the person genuinely wants to complete it. This is why someone with ADHD might spend 3 hours researching a topic they're fascinated by, but struggle to spend 20 minutes filling out a routine form. From the outside, it can look like a lack of effort or motivation. The person may even become frustrated with themselves because they know they are capable of concentrating intensely. But being able to focus intensely on something interesting doesn't necessarily mean they can voluntarily produce that same level of focus whenever they want. Hyperfocus can feel almost effortless while it's happening. A person may become so absorbed that they lose awareness of everything happening around them. They might not notice how much time has passed. They may ignore notifications, forget about other responsibilities, or become frustrated when someone interrupts them. The experience can be incredibly rewarding because the brain is receiving continuous stimulation from something that feels meaningful, interesting, or satisfying. One of the most commonly discussed aspects of ADHD is time blindness, which refers to difficulty accurately perceiving or managing the passage of time. During hyperfocus, this can become especially noticeable. Someone may start an activity thinking they'll spend 20 minutes on it, only to realize much later that several hours have passed. They weren't necessarily choosing to ignore everything else. Their attention became so absorbed that their awareness of time and competing priorities faded into the background. This can create both positive and negative consequences. Hyperfocus can be incredibly useful when directed towards something productive. A person might become deeply immersed in art, music, programming, writing, studying, building something, or solving a difficult problem. They may produce an impressive amount of work in a relatively short period because their attention is intensely engaged. For some people, hyperfocus may even become one of their strengths. When something genuinely captures their interest, they may explore it in extraordinary depth. They may notice details other people overlook, learn large amounts of information, or persist with a difficult problem because they find the challenge engaging. But hyperfocus isn't always beneficial. Someone can become absorbed in an activity that isn't a priority while important responsibilities are waiting. They might intend to clean their room, but become fascinated by something they discover online. They might plan to study but spend hours researching an unrelated topic. They may start watching one video and suddenly realize they've spent much longer than intended. This can become especially frustrating because the person may know exactly what they should be doing. They may genuinely want to do it. They may even feel anxious about not doing it. Yet knowing that something is important doesn't always make it easier to direct attention toward it. That's one reason the idea that people with ADHD simply don't care enough can be so misleading. A person can care deeply about a task and still struggle to initiate it, sustain attention on it, or shift attention toward it. ADHD can affect executive functioning, which includes mental processes involved in planning, organizing, starting tasks, managing time, shifting attention, and regulating behavior. Another important piece is task switching. Imagine you're deeply involved in something interesting and someone suddenly asks you to stop. Even if the interruption is reasonable, switching from one mental state to another can feel surprisingly difficult. For someone with ADHD, transitioning away from a highly engaging activity may require significant effort. This can sometimes lead to the stereotype that someone is ignoring people because they're absorbed in what they're doing. In reality, they may be experiencing difficulty disengaging their attention. That doesn't mean they shouldn't learn strategies for managing interruptions or responsibilities, but understanding what's happening can make the behavior easier to understand. Hyperfocus can also interact with emotions. Something emotionally exciting, rewarding, or personally meaningful can be particularly powerful at capturing attention. That's one reason two people can encounter the exact same task and have completely different experiences of focus. One person might find a task fascinating and become completely absorbed. Another might find it painfully boring and struggle to begin. For someone with ADHD, the difference between those two experiences can sometimes be particularly pronounced. It's also important to understand that hyperfocus isn't an official diagnostic criterion for ADHD. It's a commonly reported experience among many people with ADHD, but not every person with ADHD experiences it in the same way. And experiencing intense focus by itself doesn't mean someone has ADHD. Other conditions, personality traits, interests, and normal variations in attention can also involve periods of deep concentration. ADHD itself is diagnosed based on a broader pattern of symptoms involving attention and/or hyperactivity and impulsivity, beginning in childhood and causing meaningful difficulties across areas of life. A person shouldn't diagnose themselves solely because they experience hyperfocus. Another misconception is that hyperfocus means someone with ADHD can simply turn it on whenever they need to. Usually, it doesn't work that way. You can't necessarily decide, I need to hyperfocus on this boring task for the next 3 hours. Hyperfocus tends to emerge when something strongly captures attention. That's very different from deliberately directing attention towards something that feels unrewarding. This is one reason people with ADHD can sometimes have a confusing relationship with productivity. They may procrastinate for a long time, feel overwhelmed by a task, suddenly become intensely focused close to a deadline, and complete a huge amount of work in a short period. Someone watching from the outside may think, you could have done that the whole time. But the person's ability to engage may have changed dramatically once urgency, novelty, or consequences became strong enough to capture their attention. Deadlines can provide that extra stimulation. Suddenly, the task becomes more urgent, emotionally significant, and difficult to ignore. The brain may respond differently to that heightened level of stimulation, making it easier to engage. However, relying on last-minute pressure isn't always sustainable. It can contribute to stress, poor sleep, burnout, and inconsistent performance. Someone might repeatedly succeed under pressure and therefore appear highly capable while privately feeling exhausted by the amount of effort required to get there. This is another reason ADHD can be misunderstood. People sometimes look at achievements and assume that someone couldn't possibly have attention difficulties. But ADHD doesn't mean a person is incapable of accomplishing things. Someone with ADHD can be highly intelligent, creative, talented, successful, and hardworking while still struggling significantly with executive functioning. They may have developed strategies that compensate for some of their difficulties. They may use alarms, calendars, reminders, written lists, routines, accountability, or other systems to help manage tasks that don't naturally hold their attention. And those strategies can be extremely helpful. Treatment and support for ADHD can also include behavioral strategies, organizational approaches, psychotherapy, accommodations, and, for some people, medication prescribed by a qualified healthcare professional. The appropriate approach depends on the individual. Understanding ADHD as a difference in attention regulation rather than simply a lack of attention can change the conversation completely. Instead of asking, why can't you just focus? A more useful question might be, what makes this task difficult for your brain to engage with? And what could make it easier? Sometimes the answer is breaking a large task into smaller pieces. Sometimes it's reducing distractions. Sometimes it's adding structure, novelty, movement, reminders, or accountability. Sometimes professional support is appropriate. The goal isn't to make someone's brain work exactly like everyone else's. It's to help them understand how their brain works and build strategies around that. And perhaps one of the most important things to understand about hyperfocus is that it doesn't cancel out ADHD. Someone can spend hours completely absorbed in something they're passionate about and still struggle enormously with everyday tasks. They can love reading, but struggle to read a textbook. They can spend hours creating art, but struggle to answer an email. They can research a subject for an entire afternoon, but forget an appointment. They can be deeply engaged in a conversation about something fascinating while struggling to listen during a conversation that feels repetitive. These aren't necessarily contradictions, they're different expressions of how attention can be regulated. ADHD isn't simply a brain that doesn't pay attention. For many people, it's a brain that can have difficulty controlling attention consistently and intentionally. Sometimes attention wanders, sometimes attention gets stuck, and sometimes it becomes incredibly powerful when the right thing captures it. That's why understanding hyperfocus can help remove some of the shame surrounding ADHD. A person isn't necessarily lazy because they can't start a boring task. They aren't necessarily careless because they lose track of time. And they aren't necessarily choosing to ignore responsibilities because they become absorbed in something interesting. There may be neurological and executive function challenges underneath those behaviors. That doesn't mean ADHD makes someone incapable of responsibility. It means understanding the challenge can help people find better strategies for managing it. The goal isn't to romanticize ADHD or pretend that every symptom is a superpower. Hyperfocus can sometimes be useful, but it can also interfere with sleep, responsibilities, relationships, and daily life. ADHD can involve real challenges, and people deserve support rather than being reduced to stereotypes. At the same time, recognizing strengths can be valuable. Creativity, curiosity, enthusiasm, problem solving, intense interest, and the ability to become deeply engaged with meaningful subjects can all be valuable qualities. The important thing is understanding that strengths and difficulties can exist at the same time. So, the next time you hear someone say, if they can focus on something for hours, they can't have ADHD, remember that attention isn't simply about whether someone can focus. The bigger question is whether they can regulate where their attention goes, when it starts, how long it lasts, and when they can shift it somewhere else. And for many people with ADHD, that's where the real challenge lies. Have you ever experienced hyperfocus and completely lost track of time?